According to Hinrich and Ismaldino, in designing a lesson with the integration of technology, it is crucial to observe a framework that can act as a guide in its formulation. That's why different instructional designs, models, and framework were developed, such as ADDIE model, Assure model, Gagne's 9 events of instruction model, Murrell's principles of instruction model, the KIMP instructional design model, and many other more. But of today's discussion, we will only focus on Assure model. Again, for this topic, we will only focus on Assure instructional model. This is Ruiz Marcus B, a BS Ed Science 3B. In this discussion, we will be able to know the different ideas and information about Assure model, such as who developed this model, what is Assure model, how can Assure model be applied in our career as a future educator, and why should we use Assure model? Assure instructional model was developed by Robert Hinrich and Michael Molenda in 1999 of Indiana University. But what is really an Assure model? So an Assure model is based on Robert Gagne's events of instruction. And according to Hinrich, Molinda, and Russell, 1993, Assure model focused on planning and conducting instruction that incorporate medias, and of course, capable of producing the desired outcome. And the model is constructivism-based. In other words, it is a framework that assumes passive learners will not learn at their best, but learners must be actively participating in their own learning, interacting with their environment and peers. Now, why should you need to use the Assure model? Now, the Assure model is an instructional system or guideline that teachers can use to develop lesson plan which integrate the use of technology and media according to Ismaldino, Lotter, and Russell. And of course, it places the focus on the learners and the overall outcome of accomplishing learning objectives. Then, also, the Assure model gives new or the inexperienced teachers a general roadmap to follow to help them think more like an expert teachers. And this model does not require high complexity of derived media, deep ID knowledge, or high revision of design, according to Gustafson and Branch 2002. So teachers also prefer the Assure model because it is designed to be used for a few hours of instruction and for each individual student. For now, how can I use the Assure model, or how can you as future educator can use the Assure model? Well, the Assure model identifies 6 essential elements in the instructional process. So the Assure model has 6 steps, each represented by a letter in the acronym title, which each step describing a set of tasks central to the informed selection and use of educational technology. So the Assure acronym stands for these important components. A stands for Analyze Learners. S for State Objectives. Another S for the Assure is Select Methods, Media, and Materials. U stands for Utilize Methods, Media, and Materials. And the R, Require Learners' Participation. And lastly, to complete, E stands for Evaluate and Revise. Now let's go over for them one by one. First is Analyze the Learners. In this section, we come to think of who is the audience, like their demographics, their general characteristics, and entry competencies, and also their learning preferences. Now, with the learner as the center of the instructional process, our initial consideration is to get a clear picture of the learner's learning style, age level, interest or preferences, background, special needs, and cultural diversity. Now, the first S for Assure stands for State Objectives. Now, the objective is the main instruction guide that will direct the flow to reach the target. In here, we come to think of what students need to learn. Now, it must include the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes is the statement describes what the learner would be able to perform as a result of the instruction. And also, we must also include the course rubrics, in which the course rubrics include the skills and concepts, proficiency accuracy, and conditions of performance. As for the second S for assure, it stands for select methods, media, and material. Now selecting the appropriate way of delivering the lesson and using the applicable media or technology can effectively make learners acquire understanding of the lesson or gain the competence desired. In here, our main question is, what do instructors need to use for face-to-face, online, and hybrid teaching? Here, we must select instructional material, produce new materials, or repurpose existing materials. Now, the teacher has to decide which strategy, materials, or technology would be the best considering the learners and the desired learning outcomes. As for the U in Assure, it stands for Utilize Methods, Media, and Material. Now, having selected the strategy, media, and materials is just halfway of the task done. Planning how to implement those entails a lot of consideration. Our main question here is, how do instructors use materials? Usually, they preview the materials, prepare the environment, and provide instruction. Bearing in mind the learning outcome of the lesson, the teacher decides which part of the instructional flow will a particular material or technology be employed and the manner of how it will be more effective to achieve the learning outcome. The R stands for Require Learners' Participation. Now, students' engagement is an important element. The learners have to be made to understand their role in taking accountability of their own learning. Therefore, the teacher has designed sections of the lesson where the learners are guided to participate and perform tasks with minimal or no supervision at all. So, students will actively engage in discussion, small group activities, and formative assessment. To complete our assure, the last one is evaluate and revise. Now, by assessing learners' performance can take place across phases and the lesson. However, it is emphasized that the basic rule is that the evaluation should be congruent to the learning outcome provided in the lesson. Some learning outcomes can be sufficiently evaluated by a pen and paper test, but there are other learning outcomes that can be assessed by using rubrics or having an aggregated write-up through the use of portfolio assessment. Now the teacher decides which is appropriate for the intention of the evaluation activity. In here, we try to know what works and what doesn't. Then, the summative evaluation includes the instructional delivery and the revision of media and materials to improve students' outcomes. Now, by applying those 6 steps of a sure model, we will be able to come up with great lesson plan, enable for us to deliver a great lesson in our students in the learning process. Again, this is Ruiz Maricris B of BSED Science 3B. Thank you.